Hey everybody, so this is one of my first long videos and I'm going to talk a bit um, about my musical journey and how I got to where I'm at. So I haven't done a lot of these kind of videos, and in my head it's a lot easier to express these things than when I'm actually doing this right now, I'm realizing. Um, so I just want to let you know, this video is not um, the best format in terms of me saying everything tersely and very well. I want to get good at this kind of thing, and so I'm just gonna do it. Okay, that's how I've gotten good at everything. I've just done it. Um, I'm not saying I'm good at everything in the world. I mean everything I've gotten good at. It's because I just did it. So I'm gonna follow that principle here, knowing that it's not gonna be great. Uh, you know, in terms of my ability to tersely and amazingly uh, do an exposition here. It's gonna be there are gonna be points where I'm like getting over my camera nervousness and my mind's blanking or whatever, and it's not gonna be as good as I think it could be. But already I'm considering deleting it because I'm like, oh wow, I'm so long-winded on this part. But I'm not going to. I'm just gonna put it up, and then I can go through it and like do shorts of like the good ideas. Because the problem is, I was doing shorts for like specific concepts, and then I found that they'd often like go just over the 3 minute limit. So I thought I need to do a long video. Then I won't be cut off. The thing is, though, now that there's like an infinite length, it's my mind is like, oh, I have an infinite length. It's more chill, I guess. So, the opposite evil is a potential of me kind of like just being like, what am I even saying? Like what's there to say? Even though there's so many things I can tell you. I was thinking, oh, I could probably sit in front of a camera and talk for multiple days. Um, so maybe at some point I'll get a friend to interview me because it'll be a more natural thing, having someone there. Um, Regardless, it's good as a creator, I know, to be able to do this. So I'm going to start it. So without much further ado, here goes. All right, so I'll just start with some ideas that came to me recently that I thought this would be cool to share in whatever order they occur to me, and then I'll try my hand at my first uh, or maybe it'll emerge from it something like I have to have a narrative, right? I've been playing music for 20 years. There's many different stories I can tell. Ultimately, I'm gonna need to kind of like discern for myself what is the most important story to share. Um, uh, so so here goes. All right. So what am I even doing? Like, imagine someone watches me play music and they're like, "Oh, that guitar sounds like a sitar." Maybe they think, "I've heard that a lot. Your music is very soothing." I've heard, and often when this happens, it occurs to me like what all I would say if I were to fully answer and fully follow up on my enthusiasm that these comments elicit in me. But usually it's after a show or it's while I'm playing on a live stream, and quite frankly, I don't have the time, and I'm aware it's not the time to go into that. Obviously it's not. So I just kind of like briefly respond in whatever way seems appropriate, but I don't get to be like, oh yeah, like I know why it's soothing. Here's why it's soothing. Because like obviously if you value the soothingness enough to get that compliment, then you value things that are soothing. And doing something that is soothing, I have an understanding of why it's soothing, of how it's soothing. I'm not saying if you kept asking me why after I said everything, I'd be able to go back, in that infinite regression and be like, and I know, I'm not like puffing my chest up, but like, there's this myth in music, which is part of the mystique. But honestly, I can't afford to have like perfect mystique these days because um, I'm reaching people through a medium where like that lends itself to like having to compensate for the fact that I'm a little pixelated image in a screen by like doing something to make myself personable so you connect with me, because we're not just connecting in real life on here, right? So that means usually like sharing information, right? um, if you could look at the world with your eyes, or you can look at it, or you had to like always look at the world through a screen first, obviously with your eyes still, but you choose with your eyes because it has a magic to it. So I guess in order to like make up for that magic, you have to use the screen kind of thing in some way that um, realizes what it's good for. I don't know. Anyway, I'm talking a lot about this, but basically what I'm saying, like in the ideal world, I wouldn't be like necessarily, like talking about myself. Like I have that thing, I have that sense in everyday life to not do that ad infinitum. Um, so if this offends that sense of yours, then just understand I'm a musician who plays music that often people express they appreciate, and so I know that it's not just the people in the town where I happen to live. There are many other people in similar towns across the world that were at a reach with the music would help. And the thing is that our society is now structured around the fact that we have phones. So it's not like you just play good music and talk to someone who's looked at, you know, a lot of talent. It isn't necessarily like that. It's not as easy for things to take off by word of mouth, is kind of what I'm getting at, or by just real life interactions. You're often gonna be, even if you're connecting with someone who can open doors for you, they're going to be screening your social media. So it's like, can you do that? You get asked this in life, you know. Yeah, imagine like anyway, like all the time, basically, like it's a step in the process of like getting things. Like, do you have social media? And people are gonna um, judge your ability, whether or not this is what they're thinking they're doing. This is effective what they're doing, your ability to use that, right? And this is long winded, but I know that social media isn't really made for art. It's made for the part of the mind that when you sit down in meditation, you often kind of like, it's not just for this, but it's kind of like, it's a product of this. So it carries you know, it carries something of this, it like inextricably in it. That part of the mind that like has all these questions, that wants certainty, right? That won't stop shutting up because it's trying to figure out problems to how to make whatever desires you still have to get you them, to make sure all the quote unquote problems in your life are solved. So when people are holding their phone in their hand, you know they're kind of expecting you in some way to to give them that. So as much as it might be nice to just be like, look, you'd be happier if you yourself got over your desire to get that, and you could be more at peace with not knowing everything and being able to like intellectually and verbally, be like, I get it, but just appreciate it in the moment. Anyway, the thing is that when how do I fix this? Oh, I'm talking against one of the biggest monsters that we've all in some way that's what I have to say. It happens to me too. Now people are, we spend more time with our phones because this technology um, you know emphasize, or it creates more and more of it proliferates like uh, anti-socialness. Like our culture is less social in the sense of people being comfortable just talking and like face to face right off the bat. Now we, even if we do that, we usually want to go first and check the social media. Does that make sense? It's not everyone's gonna understand this or want to agree with it. I'm just trying to say that like for me, even though ideally like I got a smartphone late, but eventually I got it because as a musician you're kind of expected to have social media pages, and then you need the phone that works well with those, and then you get it. So I'm just saying that then you have the phone. Even for me now, I got the phone in my hand. Once you have it in your hand, you make the account on the platform. The feed is now feeding you stuff that's very super geared towards your mind. So I'm trying to say, I am not being Mr. Judgy. Like I have a phone. I'm not judging you. I'm just judging the culture's overall, it's going where it's going now. I don't think it's just about to turn around immediately, but as I judge the culture, I wouldn't judge you because I know why you have a phone. I know once you have one, it's super easy you pick up and you start scrolling and you're in that frame of mind because it inculcates that. That's its nature. There's like pretty much no getting around the fact that that is what it is. And I'm stating it. I'm not like looking around and pretending. I'm not, being false with you here. I'm being honest. Okay. So, anyway, where am I going with all of this? So now we have the phone, and here I'm making the video, and I'm gonna tell you about things about myself, because the thing is that I guess what I'm trying to do is kind of like address the fact that there's probably two parts of you. There's part of you that might be like sensitive naturally, because this is how we are in real life, to like how we judge people in real life, right? And it's like, if you're talking about yourself for a long time and talking about music and no one else is there or whatever, it's like, why are you going on about this? And it might even be like, man, like, I just like your music. Like, please don't tell me too much, so like, I'm just trying to kind of state where I'm at or where I am. In my ideal world, it would be more like that. More people would be like that. And I wouldn't kind of like have to be doing this in order for, my music to reach more people in a sort of like roundabout way. Because music is what turns off my mind. It's what helps get me out of that. It's one of the things, one of the ways, and a very, very powerful one for that. So I don't think music is for, social media. And I'm here trying to make the social media serve the music, and hopefully also ultimately in some way serve you, because the concepts that I've hit upon in relation to music, while they're not the music itself and they are concepts, they're a lot better than a lot of the concepts that we've been conditioned with in our culture that we don't even know are the concepts we hold, because before we see something else, they're just like, they're like air, they're right there and we're breathing them, but we don't see them necessarily. But then if you have like smoke in the air, something else, then you become aware, oh yeah, there is air or whatever, or you move your hand, and then now you know there's air there because you feel it, because it's revealed by something else. So I've, noticed some other musical, you could say, frameworks, and yes, they do exist in their own ways in different cultures, while, the ideal one is like sort of like and different cultures vary to the degree that they've like sort of manifested free of conventions that are arbitrary, like universal musical principles. But every successful musical tradition and culture to some extent contains universal musical principles, because that's what reaches the heart. So anyway, so I hope to share with you guys some of these universal musical principles, and that's like the redemptive side of this whole thing, right? The redeeming, redemptive side, whichever word is the right one, that can happen through this. Though, like, again, if I had to, if I had to pick between sharing those concepts verbally and letting them speak for themselves through the music, I always choose the music, and I devote most of my more time to that than to this. But I'll do this too, because this interfaces I find better, it interfaces well with the social media, and what people are looking for in that, right? And I already explained that. I don't have to go back over that much more. I already explained why I'm doing that. And then, yeah, the upshot of it is that these ideas can get shared, and it's not a bad thing. So now that I've taken, now that I've talked for probably like, I don't know how long it has been, like 7 minutes or something, on why I'm even doing this. I'll share some actual ideas and musical thoughts. So as a kid, okay, so when you hear this kind of music that I'm playing, or whatever, when you hear the music that I play, you might think the concepts that come to your mind might be like, oh, mystical, Eastern, some people might think like, oh, this guy's like copying a different culture. I'm wearing this. I work at a Himalayan restaurant. It's probably one of the, and this is Indian, but you know, first of all, I think it's beautiful. Second of all, that's my job. Okay, and I'm happy to play. I like that these cultures have these values too, but I'm not like copying the culture. And here's part of my. I don't want to sound defensive. This is part of why I don't like to like explain myself in that sense, but maybe to sort of like render sort of what I'm doing more comprehensible and kind of like reveal some of the truth, the facts about it, so that people know, whether or not they believe me. Again, that's ultimately not in my hands. It's out of my control. So I kind of like surrender there. I can just tell my honest story, and you guys can believe it, or you can hold on to whatever narrative your mind might have suggested to you, if that's what you want to do. And you know it is what it is. So when I was a kid, um, even in elementary school, I'd say one thing is that I wasn't playing this super early, right? Like I started playing trumpet when we started playing music in that. Lean back. I don't want to hunch too much. I can't. Okay. Or sit up. I want to sit up straight. So, I started playing trumpet in third grade. I was on the fence between trumpet and flute because flute sounded beautiful, but trumpet looked like fun. You kind of have that energy to it. I went with the trumpet, and I played that through like middle school regularly. In middle school, I started playing guitar. I didn't really have CDs until I was like, I don't know, going on like fifth grade around then. So, again, probably later than most people. And why I'm sharing this is because I've heard of musicians who I really liked, who, like guitarists and stuff. And I've heard stories where they're playing music when they're like 4 or whatever, or even if they're not really playing, they have the guitar and they're taking pictures with it. Like that wasn't me. So like if you like my music, in case maybe this sounds too like much like I'm like assuming that people are like this, but like I know the look in people's eyes because I've had it myself, and still have it myself. When you are like impressed by a musician, you're kind of like, you like the music a lot, you want to listen to more of it, you want to ask them questions about their musical journey. And I know people have had it for me. So this is for those people, because I think it can be helpful for people to hear from a musician that, oh, they started playing, when they were like, what, I was like 12 or 13, right? I know some of you guys might be like, oh, you started so young. But compared to like 4, it can be relieving to many people. Because I remember for some point in my life, when I was like really I guess like reading a lot about certain musicians, I was feeling like, oh my god, they started so much earlier than me. Oh no, kind of thing. So I just want to share this because for some people it might be kind of hardening, or not hardening. I mean, that's not the word, but it just might be a good thing to hear. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, this is a weird format. There's no one here in my kitchen. I'm just talking, and maybe the neighbors can hear me just talking to no one. I have to get over that, right? If I'm going to do this, and I can't depend on like, oh, I need a friend to be here, because like here's a principle I've learned in music. Like if you want to make something happen, unless you're like very lucky, you have to know how to do it yourself. Because I went through a phase, for example, where I like wanted to play with a band. Um, like I led a band. I played with some people, like 2 pieces, a good amount of 2 pieces. Though like when the people did play, I wanted to do it like every day. I wanted to like basically like do it pretty much all the time when I wasn't doing other fun things. But basically I just wanted to like completely devote myself to music. And it seemed obvious to me, like, oh wow, you're playing, you're having a great time. You go to play a house show or whatever, and people are like, wow, that was cool. It's like, duh, like keep doing this. But I don't know, for whatever reason. I mean, now I kind of know, and I can be like, oh, this guy probably XYZ, that person, yada, yada, yada. but I'm not going to go into that. But at the time, it kind of like didn't get it. I thought you kind of just assume that everyone's going to be as gung ho about it as you, and so like I did go through some frustrating times of like, if I had a band, I don't know, it just felt like, you're the one who like loves it the most and who's like the most gung ho and just like wants to make a career out of it, believes that's possible. Why not if we just kind of go full speed ahead? And so I know it can be frustrating if you're like, trying to find these other musicians. And as you get older, and especially since social media, I think, I don't know, maybe I don't want to sound too old, but I think prior to that, I think there was more opportunity. There's just less judgment. I'll just be honest here. Like, so, without wanting to, we just judge each other on each other's social media. So I think that it was easier to like just like have people see for themselves. And they go to a jam session. There wasn't the expectation that you're gonna have to have sort of like an online resume just to meet a musician and jam with them. Like now, no one says that. That would sound weird, thinking, oh, well, I don't jam with musicians unless I see their online resume. But like, effectively, that is what's happening, and so much so that it can even counteract people's, you know, to a degree, not entirely nullify, but like, it would definitely not entirely nullify, but like, people can kind of forget how well certain moments went if later they go and they listen to like your demo that it has its flaws, but and then they listen to that 5 times, 7 times, whatever, and then you know maybe they're not as creative as you. Maybe they still have more of a self-critical mind, and now they're projecting it on that. And now you lost another bandmate, even though they're a good musician or whatever. But anyway, in that particular example, the person who came to mind wasn't really that active, even though they're good at music. When I met them, and after that didn't pan out, as far as I know, I don't wish this upon them. Hopefully, I want everyone to be happy and whatever. But I don't blame myself for that. I see like, oh, that person wasn't. Yeah, like they had like put their creativity in the garage in a stack, and so I don't blame them for I don't. I think you know what I'm saying. Um, anyway, I don't want to seem Mr. Bitter and just recount negative things, but the whole point here is just I'm doing these videos myself. When I play, you often see me playing by myself, or sometimes accompanied by a percussionist. I think that's ideal. That's nice. It's ideal to work with people who are on board. The point is rather, don't let not having that keep you from taking action. Be able to do without that. I'm not like Mr. like, oh, you need to be completely self-sufficient in all things and never and just stay that way. But definitely it doesn't hurt to be self-sufficient where you can be self-sufficient relatively easily, um, and then be open to and be ready to play with the right person or work together with the right people when they're there for as long as you can. Anyway, blah blah blah. What am I trying to say about here? Again, I don't want to seem too negative, but I think when you start talking about your life and the experiences and things you learned, if you're like being honest, it might kind of sound negative because experience. I'm not saying life is bad or pessimistic, but like you kind of learn through pain. You learn through things not going the way you had hoped they would just smoothly go. So a lot of the lessons, they're not the things that you would just want to hear, and that's probably why you didn't accept them as true until life told you or taught you, hey, buddy, it isn't this way, and you say, oh, it's that way, and you say, okay, well, how can I realistically be open to the ideal while just doing what I can now? So anyway, this is the video. I've gone on for like 15 minutes already, and I still have so many things to say. Yeah, I could definitely talk for a couple days. Cut the video up. It's easy. So yeah, just being able to do things on your own. The other thing I think about that in connection with music is this. I do think that there's an idea that some people might even try to carry over into music of like, we all need to take turns doing like doing, you know, whatever thing when you're viewing actions through the lens of like, oh, what seems cooler, or like, what is the higher status thing traditionally, or whatever, you're looking at, to be like, oh, because that's the cooler thing, we need to take turns to be even. And no, like, that's not true. Like, that's why in any like functioning group, people have individual roles. And while like there's like, you know whatever overlap, um, each role is specialized, right? Like, when you're driving your car, there's not a steering wheel in the passenger seat. Like, think of how many accidents there would be. So, for the music I play, like, I'm the melodicist. I chose to play the guitar, even since the trumpet. I've been playing melody. I didn't pick the trumpet because I thought, oh, like, I want to do melody. I think melody is cooler than drums, and that it's higher. Like, I picked it because it was, I don't even, it was just what was offered, and I liked it. And I've always, since then, I've always loved playing melodies. So I just do what I love, and regardless of whether it's seen as high status or low status, I do what I love. And then naturally, there are other roles that are complementary. And if I find someone who's skilled in that role, especially, it's necessary, right? Especially, it's necessary for them to be good at it, that they love what they do. Then I'm happy to collaborate with them. So the elements of music, there are three elements of music that are taught, that people generally say when they're talking about it. Maybe four, three first, and then people are like, hey, actually there's this one, and it's like, that's true too. So what are they? They're melody, harmony, and rhythm. Melody, harmony, and rhythm. And the fourth one, in case you're wondering, is timbre. Timbre is like, if two instruments are playing the same note, it's what's different between them. Okay, so freedom. I think everyone can understand that freedom's nice to have, and people might sacrifice freedom. They do sacrifice freedom for all sorts of reasons I'm not going to go into. I sacrifice freedoms in other areas of life, or I have been now, like up till now, right? Or I currently am, I'd say, in order to be free in the area that I'm free in, right? Like in order to make a choice from my freedom in an area of life that, how do I put this? I don't know. I'm just trying to say that, like, I get it. Like, people, people sacrifice freedom in many ways, right? That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm trying to say I do that too. I guess the idea of, like, if you're like a monk or something like that, like, who's like totally free, or you're like, wandering, like, there might be people who try to live out the freedom to the max, where they're like, look, I'm not carrying any baggage or locking myself into any, but then they sacrifice, maybe like the freedom to have all these material things, or to, like, whatever. Because if they, anyway, my point is just that freedom, everyone likes it, even though not everyone prioritizes it in all areas of their life. And some people don't prioritize it in most areas of their life, I guess, because they really want something. But freedom is really nice. It might be one of the nicest things to have. It might be the best thing to have. I don't know, maybe. I think, like, freedom and love, they're two things that are very, like, in terms of when you're saying you're a human here living your life, they're very, very, very good to have, and they relate to, like, literally what you do with your life, right? Like, you're doing an action. Do you love the action? You're doing an action. Are you free in the way that you're doing the action? You could say peace is nice, but, peace in theory you can have, in action and in inactivity. And I guess you kind of say that about freedom, or you could say you could feel love. But my point is just, freedom is a value that a lot of people have, right? and I just shared some of the ways that come to mind when I think about it. And here on in the music, because it's one of the things I love to do in life, and I think by its very nature, it's one of the best things you can do with your time, like in terms of like it's so many things. I just think it is one of the best things, one of the best activities. Uh, you know, definitely you could say other people can appreciate when you're doing music as an activity, so it can benefit them, and at the same time, you enjoy it too, um, and you don't just enjoy it because other people are enjoying it. Because there are many things that you can do that in and of themselves they weren't benefiting other people. You'd be like, why am I doing this? Yeah, I don't like doing it. But if you're like, are choosing to do something, you know. To either because you want to make money and you want, or just be, or if you're doing it as an act of service to help other people without taking into account how the nature of the action in the absence of there being other people involved affects you, then then there's so many activities. But when you look at the activities that, like, whether you take the other people out or they're there, you just enjoy the activity itself. I don't know. Now it's like, oh, you're Mr. Selfish. Oh, you've just revealed that you're picking something more selfish, and selfish is bad and selfless is good. It's like I'm just talking about love of activities, right? Like, you can play music pretty much indefinitely and like not get tired of it. Like, you can't say that about a lot of things. You can't just keep eating. You can't. I'm not going to say it, but at least uh, for a man, if you did that indefinitely, you just get super tired and lose your health if you did it to its full thing. And it's built into your body that after you do that, you don't want to do it. So I'm just saying, like, of all the activities, I'm making the point that music has this about it, and it's hard to find other things that are like that. Um, and also, it doesn't really require any like materia. You could literally be walking in the woods singing and be enjoying music very much, and you don't even need a paintbrush or paint. Nothing bad on painting. The other thing about music is that you enjoy it as it happens, and it doesn't have to leave a trace. Like, you don't have to um, like write it down. It's I'm not saying don't write it down if it's some beautiful melody you want to play again, but you can fully enjoy that melody without concerning yourself with the preservation and dissemination of it. So it's an activity that can be done not as a means to an end, but as an ends to itself. And again, I'm not sure there are any other activities like that. Off the top of my head, none come to mind. So I just gave you a very logical reason, a very philosophical perhaps reason for why for music, picking that as an activity. And why I did that is because the next thing is like, okay, well, if that's why you're picking music, then you're going to want to optimize for that. You're not going to want to optimize for music, to make yourself look better. You're not going to want to optimize for music to get girls. You're not going to want to optimize for music to make money, because that means that you're going to have some other like loop running in your head while you're making the music, dictating what you're doing in the music besides literally what feels the best to play. And it's like there are many other areas you can go into to achieve those ends that you'd be making music subservient to, and it were you to do that, that are much, well, they're much better suited to those ends. Like, I know you might think, oh well, these rock stars are loaded or whatever, but and like, if your initial, I don't know, I'm not gonna say that or like, oh, they get all the girls, but like, you don't need to be a rock star to have either of those things. And for most people, at least, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to get those, not by trying to use music to get them. So I just made a point, and to say that the best, basically the what I'm positing would be that um, you're gonna enjoy music the most if it's an end in itself rather than as a means to an end. Um, okay. Um, it's the physical world, you know. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go too much further into that. Actually, you know, it's like if other things come, you know, as byproducts, if you're doing it without you, you know, much, if at all, changing what you're doing for it, then you're going to enjoy it. Or if you factor in, okay, well, if you play music a lot to get masterful at it, you're going to realize you want to spend a high amount of time doing it. And if you want to spend a high amount of time doing it, then it makes sense to have as, you know, a profession, or you're not to have as a profession just like, oh, generally, and be open to anything. But if you can be, you know, as your profession, playing music the way that is ideal for you to play it, then yeah, you can be getting money. It might not be as, at a given point in time, it might not be as I don't know. I'm just gonna leave it at that. You know. I think that makes sense. Um, you might say, oh, well, then you're gonna be tempted. That's a different story. That's a different story. But you could also look at it as like, you know, you're playing music and you're making money from it so that you can spend as much time as you can with it, because that time is time that you're playing music. And even if that is a slight approximation or a near approximation of like your favorite way to play it, you're still getting better. You're still like it's kind of like practice at your best way of playing it. I'll put it that way. And then you still have all the other time, and you're still like, you know, exercising your fingers, exercising your you know, your like whatever you want to say it, performance skills, I guess, while you're doing it. So anyway, that's all that came out of my mouth when I started talking about this idea of having the ideal music of like it as an end to itself, and then playing what, you know, and also with the ideal of freedom and of love. So you're kind of like playing not only what you love, but the way you love the most. And then you're also realizing that like you're sacrificing freedom in other areas in your life. And, you know, ideally, whatever you're doing that you love the most, you're free in that sphere. So you're free in the way that you're playing it. So you want to be free in the way you're playing it, and so as to like play, you know, the way you love the most. Let's put it that way. So these ideals factor into the way I play music, I guess. That, yeah, they do. So I feel like a lot of what the elements that are in the music that I play precipitate out of, you know, like follow from that. Like beyond that, you have to take into account the way things are. So if you see people, you know, because you'll see a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of people with freedom as their ideal in music, but they're not being totally honest about the love, I'd say, because, and I'm not blaming them, because like to perfectly manifest or to perfectly materialize or whatever you want to instantiate both these ideals in music, you know, you have to like that's very laudable, you know, like maybe it's the easiest thing to do in like a paradoxical way, but still I'm sure that everyone who's not doing it has their reasons, either conscious or in terms of like the obstacles or distractions that came up that stop them from doing that, right? So where am I going with this? So I'll just say this. I've noticed with musicians who espouse that they're playing in a free way, that sometimes they don't, this is just to the degree that they're being honest about how that still factors in the realities and the limitations of living in the physical, right? Um, to the degree that they've factored that in, uh, the more free they are. Okay, so this is why, like, not everyone who just you give them an instrument in day one and are like, all right, like, freedom and love, I just tell them what I told you. And they're not all off to the races at the same rate, let's say. I'm not trying to, like, scare people about, like, oh, musicians being judged. I'm just saying, like, some people will interpret that wrong. They'll, when I say wrong, it's like, oh, you're saying wrong or right in art. What I mean is that um, people have abstractly, oh, sitting the guitar down, now I'm getting into it. People have abstractly considered a lot of things in life. And this is why the world is like, this is one of the huge reasons why the world is as big a mess as it is. Without like they've considered abstractly, objectively, without actually paying attention, like factoring in subjectivity. Um, and like the subject object thing, the objective world is always changing. It's what you call like Maya or whatever. It's the thing that always changes, right? And the subject is like spirit. It's like I'm not going to say like it is exclusively the watcher, but it's like the awareness, right? Now we're closer to spirit. So what I'm getting at is that it's a materialistic worldview that most people can't even see because it's just prevalent everywhere. It's like the air again. You don't necessarily recognize it until you notice something that's different from it. That has led to people making a lot of decisions based on abstract ideas and based on like things that sound logical enough, but they don't, because they are objective. They're objective. They're objective. They don't factor in human subjectivity. So that means that they're not factoring in how these things make us feel. What makes a lot of sense for a number or for a metric that you want to meet in a year isn't thinking about, well, what's that going to put you through internally? How much pain is that going to bring into the world? Not just for yourself, but perhaps with the people with whom you're involved. So I'm not saying everything's going to be roses and everything's going to be, um, uh, you know, your favorite thing all the time and everything. Though I do think that like a kind, and you could say spiritual perspective on things is going to like be honest about your and it's going to be like clear to about the feelings involved, right? Because sometimes you're going to feel like maybe like some pain in relation to a task, but it's not due to the inherent nature of the pain or of the task itself. It's more just like maybe about the situation in which you're trying to do it and some of the social stuff, or maybe it's just a question of like getting over the quote unquote pain of putting yourself there and doing it. And once you start doing it, it's actually enjoyable enough. But where I'm going with all this, blah blah blah, is to pay attention to how you actually feel playing the music and just not abstractly. I'm saying this whole way of not really paying attention to your heart as basically like a faculty, an instrument of perception, is part of a way that we've been conditioned to make a lot of decisions and to go along with a lot of other people's decisions in life, some of which are just cooked into the framework of our society without really like getting to the essence. So I think that rather than blaming the people and they were saying they're stupid or something like that, or like, oh, they don't get it, they're just worse artists, I'd probably trace, if I had to guess, I'd trace the cause more to they're being blunted to the possibility that they could be having a better time because they are in this type of thinking that's more like, like before you meditate, you can get attached to your thoughts more easily. So a thought that logically says, oh, well, I'm free if I don't play any one of the 12 notes um, more than once before playing the other ones, because if I did play uh, there's like something called 12 tone serialism. It's a whole type of music that you learn about in music school because it was a big thing. It's kind of cool. It's novel. It's interesting to hear, but I don't think it's the highest form of like musical freedom, because the person, it's trying to get to freedom, but doing away with like naturalness. So it's like trying to make music free from like a mathematical standpoint that doesn't, prioritize your actual heart. Okay. So that's one like error of like overly crystallizing the idea of freedom. And then that, in my opinion, creates a music that's less enjoyable on the whole. Though, like, as a novel thing, it's kind of, sure, like, it's like, I'm not like, I understand why it exists, and to the extent that you try to contort these things, these musical phrases that came from that way of thinking into something beautiful, like there can be beauty in that too, and it can strike your sense of novelty. But I just don't think that that conception of freedom being introduced into music is anything that's like natural to music itself. And what I'm aiming at here, again, to like circle back, is music for music's sake, not music for an ideology's sake, right? So that means that like music not to express some like abstract like philosophy or some like fixed idea that someone got about what something looked like. Maybe you explore that music, see what it would be like, but if I did that and I came with that, I would I would drop it, whatever. So anyway, so that's one way that people have gone. From my perspective, they haven't reached the highest thing, and I'd be happy for everyone. I just think I do have like, I don't say hope or like faith or whatever, like that, like there is a way of playing music that is like most natural, and like most rewarding, and like I believe it is possible that it can be most rewarding for the person hearing it, and like also like you know uh, most exciting and like enjoyable and whatever for people who hear it. So like that's like my like, it's, I'm not like a modern like I don't know, like pessimist or something. Like I do believe in that. I dare say anyway. But here I'm doing the best I can to get at it and to share my thinking about it. I'm not out here to like go around like this is like something from like over 100 years ago, right? I'm not out here to like put down other people or whatever, and like deride them or be like you're doing it wrong. My way is the only way. I am trying to seek and I'm aiming at, of course, I'll be honest, because a lot of people are like, oh well, like your way and my way. They've seen how much shitty things happen in the world because people have, tried to destroy the things that they think are wrong or are worse. And they've been like, they've started kind of basically lying and saying, oh, well, everything goes, everything's the same. It's just maybe what is your truth is, and in some areas of life, this is true. We're different. Um, and again, I like uniqueness. Like I know I've faith that like in the ideal musical framework, different things are going to come out of different people because they got different things in their heart, different predilections, whatever. But I do believe, just as there's like sort of like uh, um, something universal about math, right? That there's like something universal about music in terms of like, well, there is like people use the same scales more or less in different cultures where they hit upon it themselves. So I just know that. So the point is just that I'm not a total relativist who thinks like, oh, all music is equal. I'm not. I don't think you should deride other types of music, and I'll leave it at that. But I'm not going to let relativism keep me from aiming at what I think would be like the best conceptual framework to have to allow like what's like natural and beyond thought to flow into the music. And anyway, so where was I? Schoenberg, the freedom. Oh yeah, another way that people have like and I should add, I've dabbled, like I had assignments in college where I was to like write in this way of like coming up with a free uh, musical line. And I've also tried this other thing, which is like, people kind of like all right, so like in Buddhism and just in general, like a principle of the mind is like not overstraining it and not over relaxing it, you know? I'm not saying I'm Buddhist, I think that's where the story with like a bow or whatever comes from. But the point is just that like I've seen people straining for freedom too, where it's like they like strain to like spastically, just be free, and then they do all these like weird things, and it's like another sort of like postmodern attempt at freedom in music, and it's not really pleasing to the ear. It's probably to a degree cathartic, and I think that it can be nice to sometimes. I don't really do these ones, but I think that it can be good, to do something cathartic prior to playing music that is like the optimal music. Like the idea being that you might have like some like stuck, whatever. I've at least found that at times when I was really pissed off, if I wanted to like go play music and have fun, but I was just like so pissed off. Like this is, especially times come to mind when I was a teenager. I would go and I'd just like be like, doing this like, almost like kind of like a Jimi Hendrix type, like turn your amp very high up and just. I'm not saying like, oh, I was Jimi Hendrix. I'm just saying like I was being like wild with the whammy bar. I think I broke a whammy bar with it. The pick would be chewed up at the end of it. I wasn't like on my head, but it was like I was like doing taekwondo at the time, so like it's like a very muscular way of playing music. Like boom, 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 hitting it hard. Playing it fast, loud, being a little bit wild and like pushing it and like just really trying to like express that energy that there's nothing wrong with, but that had been cycling through the pattern of anger when I was a teenager, right? And then here's what I found. Like, yeah, it's cathartic. It feels nice because even in the music, you can like, it feels nice to a point. But then after a while, like it transmutes to enthusiasm. Basically, what you have is like all this energy at the time, and it's just like you just want to express it, and you feel like in a certain situation you can't. So anyway, it's nice to, but then what happens is that your attention comes off of the sense of like I need to express this energy because it's like I can, and then you realize just blindly doing that, thinking you're free because you want freedom, it's kind of like subpar. You realize that you're not feeling as good as you can feel because you're not taking into account harmony, and like what actually is gonna sound good. So what I found is that it's almost like a quick like lesson to yourself that anger is not going to get you to where it wants you to believe that it's going to get you. You're gonna, like, I'm not saying it's wrong, like you're gonna express the energy instead of just pushing against it. You're gonna like be like, all right, I'm angry and whatever, you're gonna do it. But then after a while you realize like, why were you angry in the first place? Because you weren't happy. You're trying to get happy through like expressing the anger. And if you just stay in the anger, it doesn't get you there. It's actually like not really a particularly fun thing to be feeling. So then you're just like, all right, like I'm gonna go do something. So anyway, so that's my aside on the postmodern notion of freedom that is like, it's not atonal because it's mathematically calculated, but it's free because it's disregarding basically what sounds beautiful. It's kind of, it's not, even if it's not, I'm angry, it might be like, I feel anxiety, or not anxiety, probably like I just feel like there's so much pressure on me, and I think it's more like that. And like I get it, like I trust me, I went to college, so I'm not saying I trust you went to college. I learned that in class, though I was exposed to it. I mean, I know what it's like when you have like all these ridiculous demands on you, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this? That's why I said that. And you feel like anyway. So, but again, you get tired of doing that. And it's not like particularly, you're not really doing with music what music can do. Like there are these harmonies built into it, like built into our ear, built into something, and a huge potential obviously for beauty with that. So if you're just disregarding that and just kind of treating your music, your instrument with all the notes on it or whatever as just like something to like kind of smash, not that you're physically smashing it, but like to kind of like express the same thing in your soul that you want to express, if you're like, I don't know, the guy in Office Space hitting the printer or whatever, it's like there's nothing particularly inherent about music that makes it a good vehicle for that. So again, it's music as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. So I think this all kind of like, how do we put it? This all kind of like these multiple currents all kind of converge and back into the stream of the direction indicated earlier of music as an end to itself. That's the most rewarding thing, and that's just like the most like just the best way to relate to it. I was gonna say the most logical. I think it's the most logical. It's the most natural, the most effective. I think it's the most effective way. It's the way to relate to it. Like treat it as what it is. It's not even like a means to tell a literal like story. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad that people enhance their movies with music or whatever, but like the purpose of music isn't to like, convey the images that pass through your mind when you like hear a story about something that a person went through in their life. Again, I know maybe I should have just left this out. A lot of people are going to hate this because it sounds like I'm shit talking like some of their favorite things in life that have like, connected with them with some of their probably most loved ones that they've have been the soundtrack to some of the best moments of their lives. I'm not saying that that shouldn't exist. I am being completely open that to make music subservient to an ends outside of it is to not allow it to express its nature fully. Um, Truly, I'd say optimally. I know. I can feel it. No one's even heard this yet, but I already know. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying it's bad to have songs with words. I'm not saying don't do that. Again, I'm not telling anyone not to do anything. I'm just saying this. Look, like, this is just a fact you can't argue with. Like, harmonies. Oh, here's what it is. I'm blaspheming against people's belief that music is, oh, my favorite musician or whatever. Like when they think of music, they think of songs that have words. So it sounds like I'm arguing with that idea. Let me just say, I'm using music to refer to that which it cannot refer, like, to the things that it can't. I'm using music to refer to what it doesn't refer to. Does that make sense? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm using the word music to refer to that which cannot be referred to by other terms. Okay, so like we have the word story because that's for a story, right? We have the word poetry because that's for poetry. We have the word short story because that's for a short story. We have the word writing because that's for writing. We have the word, painting or visual art because that's for visual art. We have the word music because that's for music. I'm not saying you can't mix and match them, and I'm not saying loosely speaking you can't like use the word music to refer to something that has something else connected with it. But I'm just saying like when I say the statement that the best music, is like an ends to itself. I'm making the point. I'm not saying the best thing. I'm saying the best music as such. That yeah, it's not being subservient in any way in any of the choices that go into it, made for it to a particular story. That's external to it, right? I think that point was made well enough. So, so yeah. So music as an end to itself. This all goes to that. So then it's like, well, where does that leave us? Like, what music is like how are you gonna play when you're playing that way? And I'll leave it at that. So I'll leave this video. I'll leave you with that at this, the end of our video.